Sorry.
And your question is wrong on another count.
Let's put it on the strap.
I'm all wrong.
In my opinion, right? I could be wrong. I could be wrong. What I'm saying is, these extremist groups, these terrorist groups,
Yes.
some of them are maniacs. The reason they're doing this is not because, oh, I don't like Britain. I don't like the summer. I don't like the hot
don't
weather.
like either.
I don't like the hot,
No, I don't like
the winter here or the summer here and the rain here. Is this what you really think? These extremists, they are giving us this excuse. I'm sure you know what their justification of their terrorist activities are, right? They're not just simply saying, you know what, I don't like the British food because I like kebabs rather than burgers.
Fish and chips.
Is that fish and chip? Is this? Do you think this is what the excuse is? So instead of me telling you, okay, let's understand this. Why are these extremist groups doing these extremist activities?
Well, I think they truly hate what the Western movement stands for.
What of the West do they hate?
The question should be who created them in the first place.
We will establish this. You will come. What of the West do they hate?
Just the infidelity and the sexual immorality and all the different things in the West that you see all the time.
Is this what they say?
No, you asked me what I think.
That's not. But that answer is not really sufficient in this context because
they want to bring. They want to bring caliphate, or they want to bring.
by killing people with their cars in Westminster. This is how you bring caliphate. Is that what they say?
I think they want to.
Now I need to understand what you understand of them. So you have now these people who hate the West, and you're saying they don't like your immoralities. Is this the reason they're giving? Because you're immoral, the West is immoral, we want a caliphate in Westminster?
Maybe. You tell
Why
me.
do you say maybe? I would like to hear that you have gone through and say, look, I'm going to research this subject. I'm going to see what these people, these terrorists are saying. You know, for what it's worth. You haven't done that, have you?
I'm asking you.
No. Why do you ask me? That's the problem, number one. You're asking me, do you think I am a supporter of ISIS? That you're asking me these questions. I'm going to give you the answer. You need to go and...
you're not, but...
No, you need to go to the media outlets or media stations of ISIS or any of the extremist groups and interact with them or find from the literature why they're doing this. You haven't done that. And this is representing of majority of the people in the West, like yourself, because you haven't really understood why they're doing this. Have you heard of the word?
Can on a more practical level, you ask for what sources you might consult. So I would recommend Al Jazeera, and not because it's the font of all knowledge, but it's better than Fox or CNN a lot. So Al Jazeera, but also lots of other sources as well. There's an Islamic news site based in London, I think, called 5 Pillars. The number 5 plus pillar in letters. I'd recommend that as another possible option. But the thing is to read widely and read different views rather than just go to one news source. And be informed. Watch Fox. I mean, but don't let that be your only source of news. Balance it out.
I do listen to Al Jazeera.
Right,
I get
good.
it over in that hotel.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, watch Russia to RT.
I listen to RT. I listen to Sky.
Well, good.
I try to listen to all of them.
Get a balanced or get a diverse diet of news, and then you'll be able to think, well, actually, I can understand this issue better now that I've, So
Given
that's
the example of the Maher of London, how
but
he's
I
been
come back to Iraq. I've not been to
Fox.
Iraq, but I understand that before Iraq was invaded illegally, I think, by your government and my government, the US and British government, it had a government in Iraq. It had a health system. It had a modern education system. Yes, Saddam Hussein was a tyrant. I don't deny that. But now it's a basket case. Now there's been a civil war. There's been hundreds of thousands of people who've been killed. It's a failed state. And out of that came something that didn't exist before: terrorism. There were no terrorist groups in Iraq. Saddam Hussein didn't exist there. Al Qaeda wasn't there, despite what your government said. And now we have, out of this chaos of a failed state, we have this Sunni terror organization that's arisen. So I partly lay the blame, actually, for ISIS indirectly, but still part of it, at the feet of Tony Blair, at the feet of George Bush, at the feet of the Americans.
Do you agree?
I don't disagree.
So when you say, what are Muslims doing about terrorism? No, hang on, let me just finish. When you say, what are the Muslims doing about terrorism? I would say to you, as I'm fairly representing everything,
Sure.
I would say to you, why is your government creating the conditions by destroying societies, reducing them back to the Stone Age, barbarizing them and killing hundreds of thousands in a war that was a lie? It was done for weapons of mass destruction, which everyone on the planet knows, apart from George Bush, doesn't exist. It's based on a lie as well. We were sold a lie. It was a terrible catastrophe. It destroyed the country, and out of this has come the whirlwind. And we're surprised and shocked. And who gets the blame? Muslims.
And
Excuse me. No way. So I think we need to look at this, the social, economic, and political context of invasions, of decimations of society, of killings of hundreds of thousands of people, as the historical political context for the rise of ISIS, rather than as some kind of abstract ideology that doesn't like a sexual immorality in the West. As if that's not what ISIS is about. They actually serve a good function in their own eyes in protecting against Shia death squads. That's why people in Mosul and other countries have actually welcomed ISIS to protect them from the Shias who operate death squads that kill them as well. So there's kind of warfare going on there. So it's much more complicated than what are you Muslims doing about terrorism? What are you Americans doing about not creating the conditions where terrorism comes out like an evil phoenix?
That was essentially my point.
Forgive me if that's the way my approach was.
No, I'm not blaming you
not
personally.
trying to say.
I'm using you as a whipping
Look,
voice.
we've got a problem here. What are the Muslims doing about it? No, not by. I totally agree with the things you said, but I think that because you mentioned that Iraq had a very strong infrastructure. I think the goal was, totally agree, 2020 hindsight, that it was wrong. We just plucked out Saddam Hussein from there. Everything will work good, and you will have
just pressed a button and then that's it. End of Saddam Hussein.
Things aren't that
They didn't do that.
right?
They actually told the entire Iraqi army was disbanded. Do you remember this? This is one of the problems. It wasn't just one individual. They actually removed the upper echelons of the state. They removed the army and the high command. And do you know the backbone, I'm told, of ISIS is Iraqi officers. Iraqi officers of Saddam Hussein's army. Iraqis. So there's a liberation there. So it wasn't just an individual. They actually removed and destabilized the whole society, and then it was caught up in chaos. And out of this was born multiple terrorist organizations. And there were, early on when America was occupying, a lot of these so-called terrorists were the people who were seeking to free their country from the occupiers. Who were the occupiers? The British and the Americans. And so they were motivated by patriotic instincts, arguably, rather than hatred for Western sexual immorality. They wanted them out of their country. It's the same with the Taliban in Afghanistan. A lot of people are motivated. They want the foreigners out of their country. And if we were Afghans, whose side would we be on? Would we just naturally go with Americans, or would we want the people of our country to rule our country?
You brought up in your conversation, you brought up George Bush and you brought up Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Where does Obama fit in this?
Well,
Do you think he
was Bush
completely clean?
No, he was
extension.
He was Bush
he's
too.
had more drone
He was son of Bush.
attacks
Son of
than
Bush.
anybody else.
He was son of Bush. Son of a Bush. No, he was son of a Bush. No. He was Bush Mark II. He continued the legacy.
Yes,
You remember?
he
I
did.
think he was
He
really
expanded it.
He expanded. I think he was really well intentioned. He wanted to close. He promised to close Guantanamo Bay. Within days again. 8 years later. No, it's still open at the very end of his presidency. He failed on his own. He was given the Nobel Peace Prize. Do you remember that?
Before he got
was given the
elected.
Nobel Peace Prize.
The day after he got elected, he got a Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing. No, I know.
It was extraordinary. Well, he got the Nobel Peace Prize for not being George Bush. That's why he got it.
The right place,
Initially.
but the Republicans stopped him doing his work.
Well, I'm not going to blame game.
Anyway, returning to your original question, why I said I felt that this was a wrong question.
Yes.
It's not what Muslims should do. Muslims have already
What should we
done.
all do?
What should you all do? I think the responsibility, you have to take some responsibility with you in your
agree
hands
with you.
and say, look,
And I agree.
the reason why,
Doesn't
as
tell
my
us
brother
the
have
truth about
expounded
anything.
and explained,
it's created huge division between
but
the West
as we have now realized, the rise of these terrorist organizations
Yes.
is partly and mainly to do with this political situation, the devastation created by our governments of respective countries. So you should not allow this to happen. And since this is happening, you should,
stop invading Muslim countries. Would be a great
Stop
start.
it tomorrow. Thank you very much. That's my frustration. Is I'm just as
Don't take this
frustrated with our
personally. You're
government
just a dude. I'm not blaming you personally.
The solution, I think, they
we should stop invading Muslim countries.
Islam, terrorism,
That generates blowback.
jihad, all of that. All this quotation, they have to take it off. Call them terrorists, call them criminal, call them whatever you like. At least. Just take
You're going to get
off
blowback.
the
You're
word
going to get
Islam and
blowback from these
Muslims
countries.
and all of
If you
that.
invade countries
At
impunity,
least.
someone's going to take
yet
out
they still
and
keep saying the
blow
same.
out something here. As cause and effect, it's common sense.
Yeah.
Someone's going to get pissed off and come back here.
So we
One of the
understood.
things I've heard
We
from
understood.
Donald Trump, though, is he doesn't.
I know he said that.
But
He said
it's interesting, though, the way how this conversation became.
Than even Obama did.
I agree. No, he's
Did you notice one thing?
I agree. I
It's
agree.
interesting how this conversation becomes a political conversation. But out of this, we learned something, right, in this discussion. But can I come back to you? Said you were a Jew.
No. I did not say.
Did you say he was a Jew?
Oh, you didn't say you were a Jew.
No, I'm a Christian.
You're a Christian.
I'm a Christian.
Okay. So as a Christian,
Yes.
what's stopping you from accepting Prophet Muhammad?
What's stopping? Well, because of who I believe Jesus Christ is. That's what our whole conversation was. I truly believe that Jesus Christ is God first.
Is this what he
I believe
taught?
in one God. I believe that I believe in the Trinity. I know it's hard to explain. It's kind of like
Why is it hard to explain?
because it's the mystery of God.
Are you saying God communicated something about him that shouldn't have been communicated?
Relationship with Jesus Christ.
May I just
Totally believe that.
May I
he
just
died
try
for
to understand
me.
something?
Yes.
You see, when the Creator communicates with the creation, it's for a reason, right? For a reason. There are many things about the Creator that we will never comprehend with our finite mind.
Like the Trinity.
So let's understand this, many things. Because God is infinitely greater than us, right? As a finite human beings, we would not fully comprehend who God is.
Like the
So
Completely agree with you.
okay, I will say why you can't bring the example of like the Trinity just now. You see, if God wants to,
Closest example I could come with is,
before you give me an example, I want to understand.
H2O can be in water, ice, or steam. It's all still H2O, but three totally separate entities. Ice is hard, gas, water, still H2O.
Okay.
One H2O.
I don't want you to commit any blasphemy, making images of God in earth or in heaven, right? This is something that's.
He knows.
But isn't that
He knows
forbidden?
what I'm trying to.
Isn't that forbidden?
What's that?
You shouldn't make any graven images of any kind about God. So you are comparing God is like this, creating an image of God which is not what God. God is God the way He describes Himself. Has He described it that way?
Through His Word. he
No.
described who he
There is nothing in His words that God described Himself like water, ice, or steam.
Oh,
is
has
it?
He? No, of course not.
Right. So you should describe God. Don't you think it's safe to describe God as God has described Himself?
That's what I'm trying to do, but
Right.
you won't accept that. You're
No.
asking for a
You have
specific example.
you have
Like-
given me an example which God hasn't described in your scripture. What I'm saying is very simple to understand. God communicates to us because He wants to communicate about something about Himself, about this reality or the reality to come after, right? Do you think God is a good communicator? Right. So whatever God communicates, we can understand. So would God communicate anything that is not anyone can understand? That no one can understand?
Then where does faith come?
I think you should.
No, this is not what I'm asking.
No, but about the communication. God did not put something in the Bible and say, 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z, there you go. Because there's some mystery to it.
You see-
He wants us to study it. He wants us to study the Old Testament, the New Testament, and how Jesus is revealed in the New Testament from the writings of the Old Testament.
But I think you've missed my point with due respect.
It's faith.
Due respect with my point. If God is going to communicate, He's going to make it in a way that we will understand. Yep. If no one understands, then there was no purpose of communicating. Let me give you an example. I'm going to communicate to you about something, right?
Yep.
I agree. Good point.
Okay. Tell me what I've communicated to you. Have I been successful in communicating what I wanted to communicate to you?
Yes.
Yes, what was it?
That language.
So if I tried communicating to you and you understood nothing, it's a failure in communication.
Think about how Jesus
Please.
spoke to so many people. He spoke in parables.
No, that's
right?
different.
He wasn't
No.
clear. He didn't say 1, 2, 3. He gave pictures. He told stories. That's
We will
how
talk about
He
the
also said he had a God as well. Just to cut. Sorry. He also said he had a God. In John's Gospel, it says, "I'm returning to your Father, my Father, your God, and my God." So Jesus had a God, therefore he was not God. If there's one God.
You don't have to believe it. I do.
No, I'm just reporting to you what Jesus
You're asking. Your
said.
question was
The reason why I say the mystery card,
because I truly believe who Jesus Christ is.
but the reason why I say the mystery card here is not really something that we should use or play, is because when we go before the time of Jesus Christ, what did
there was
the
no time before the Jesus Christ.
while he was on earth?
Oh, while he was on earth.
Right. So there were prophets and messengers raised by God to convey the message of God to mankind, right? God himself raised prophets and messengers.
Yes.
Did he tell to any of those prophets and messengers, I am a Trinity, that I am 3 in 1? Or rather he said, I am God and there is none else. Before me there is no God form. After me there is no God. I alone am God and there is none else. What did he say? Which one?
Okay, so let me just, because we're debating over the Trinity, right? So where does, if we have God the Father, where does the Holy Spirit come in? What is the Holy Spirit?
Let's go one step at a time, because instead of engaging with the subject at hand,
You want to?
No.
Debate about Jesus.
we're not debating.
Let's
We're just
just
simply
say there-
saying, if we find before Jesus the man, the prophet, peace be upon him, who was walking on this earth and conveying the message of God to the people, there were a series of prophets and messengers beforehand. If they are indeed from God, and God communicated to them about himself,
They all said
and
exactly what would happen. Isaiah said exactly what would happen to Jesus.
did they ever tell the people God is a Trinity?
53.
Did they tell the people, like for example Abraham and Moses, did they say, peace be upon these prophets, that God is a Trinity?
No, they didn't say.
If God was a Trinity, you'd expect them to say that, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay. If God,
I think
okay. If God is one,
comes in.
okay. If God is one, do you expect God to convey that message that He's one?
I said earlier how we don't understand.
No,
everything
my friend,
about
please. Just one point to understand. If God is one,
Yes.
rather than 360 million, would you expect God to convey this message that I am one?
Yes, he says,
Would we expect that God should convey that to you? Or,
have no other God than me. Yes. It's
so
very
if
clear.
God is one, He should tell you that He's one. Yes? If God is two, do you expect that He should tell you that God is two?
I don't think he's two.
No.
I believe in one God.
If He was two,
3 persons, one God.
let's try to understand. If God was two, if He were two gods,
Yes.
you would expect God to convey to you that we are two gods. Right? Right. If God is a Trinity, you would expect likewise God to convey to you that I am a Trinity.
I think it's all through the Bible.
Now, which prophet said God is a Trinity?
So you have Isaiah, you have Jeremiah, you have Micah, you have dozens and dozens of prophets.
This is what you
You have to
expect.
take the entire Bible in
No,
context.
take the whole of the Old Testament, the Tanakh, the Torah, the Nabiyim, the Ketubim, the Torah, the prophets, and the books, right? Writings. Take all of them. Which of the prophets told their respective people that God is a Trinity?
None. Or maybe you know.
None,
Where?
right? None. Did you say none?
Where was it?
No, you would expect every single one of them to say God is a Trinity if He was a Trinity.
I may expect it.
No.
I'm not God, and how
You
He
see-
wants to communicate to His people, and how He wants to show and reveal His Son.
You
That's
agreed
so
earlier on,
simple.
if God is
It
one,
was so easy,
okay.
then every.
Do you
then everybody
also
would believe,
accept
right?
that God, if He expects us to worship Him, He should tell us plainly that you should worship me? Do you expect that?
He does tell us.
Right. So if you look in the Old Testament, does God anywhere in the Old Testament mentions that you should worship me?
All through it, yeah.
All through
we
it.
should worship Him, yes.
All through it. This is what we expect, right?
Right.
Right. Do you believe Jesus is God expecting our worship?
Yes.
Can you find a verse even one throughout the whole of the entire New Testament where Jesus makes it clear that you should worship me?
I think so.
My special Muslim Bible.
I got it.
Okay.
You won't find any. You would not find any. I'm not just making this claim, it's a fact of reality.
Can I just make a footnote to that? Jesus was asked in Mark's Gospel, what is the greatest commandment? And he repeated the Shema. This is the 3 times a day creed, if you like, that Jews recite even today.